Commander Zaxthal of the Hegemony Third Fleet adjusted his crystalline breathing apparatus as he reviewed the tactical display floating before him. The holographic projection showed a small blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in what the galactic charts designated as Sector 7 Alpha. Intelligence reports indicated the presence of a recently spacefaring species. Humans, they called themselves. The bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled war machine. Zaxthal's four eyes moved independently as he observed his crew of various species, all united under the banner of the galactic hegemony. The Thrakkery navigators with their elongated skulls bent over sensor arrays, while Vorthan engineers monitored the massive ship's systems with their six-arm precision. This was the natural order, superior species guiding the galaxy toward unity and purpose. Status report. Zaxthal commanded, his translated voice carrying the authority of 300 successful conquests. Subcommander Yilnara, a sleek Etherian whose translucent skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns, approached with data tablets. The human homeworld shows typical pre-conquest characteristics, Commander. Divided political entities, primitive chemical propulsion, basic electromagnetic communications. Our analysts estimate complete subjugation within 48 standard hours once we begin orbital bombardment. Zaxthal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Another routine addition to the hegemony's ever-expanding territory. The humans have been observed for several cycles now, ever since their crude vessels first ventured beyond their planetary atmosphere. Like countless species before them, they would learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. Deploy the standard pacification fleet, he ordered. Cruiser group Theta 7 should be sufficient. We'll conserve our main battle groups for the Andromedans. The Andromedan conflict had been raging for decades, a war between two galaxy-spanning civilizations that had consumed countless resources and worlds. The hegemony's systematic expansion had finally reached the borders of Andromedan space, resulting in the largest military engagement in recorded history. Both sides were locked in a brutal stalemate, with victory measured in light years gained or lost. Commander, interrupted communications officer Veltar, his insectoid features twitching with concern. We're receiving an unexpected transmission from the human homeworld. A surrender already? Zaxthal's amusement was evident in the harmonic undertones of his voice. Display it. The main view screen shimmered to life, revealing a bipedal creature with pale skin and short, dark hair. The human wore what appeared to be a military uniform, adorned with colorful rectangles and metallic insignia. Behind him, Zaxthal could see other humans moving purposefully through what looked like a command center. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said, her voice steady despite speaking to beings she had never encountered. We know you're out there. We've been tracking your ships for the past 6 months. We know what you did to the Centauri colonies, to New Geneva, to the mining stations in the Kepler system. Zaxthal's primary eyes narrowed. Impossible. Their approach had been completely masked using standard stealth protocols that had worked against every known species. The human continued. We've seen your pattern. Orbital bombardment, followed by ground forces, then complete subjugation of survivors. We've watched you do it 37 times in our local stellar neighborhood. We know what you're planning. How are they tracking our fleet? Zaxthal demanded of his sensor operators. Unknown, Commander, replied the lead Thrakkery, his cranial ridges flushed with embarrassment. All stealth systems show nominal function. On screen, Admiral Chun was still speaking. We're not the primitive species you think we are. We've been preparing. We know about your war with the Andromedans. We know you're spread thin across 17 different fronts. We know you think we're just another easy conquest. Zaxthal felt an unfamiliar sensation, something his species might have called unease, though he would never admit it. How could these newly spacefaring primitives possess intelligence about hegemony military operations? We have a proposition, the human admiral said, her expression hardening. Withdraw from our system and our local stellar region. In exchange, we'll consider peaceful coexistence. Refuse, and we'll show you why humans have survived every extinction event our planet has thrown at us. A ripple of what could only be described as laughter moved through the bridge crew. The audacity was almost admirable. This small, isolated species was attempting to negotiate with the galactic hegemony as equals. "Prepare the standard response," Zaxthal ordered. Full-spectrum jamming followed by "Commander." Veltar's voice carried an edge of panic. Multiple contacts appearing on sensors. They're everywhere. The tactical display exploded with red markers as hundreds, then thousands of contacts appeared throughout the system. Ships were materializing from what seemed like empty space, around asteroids, behind moons within the gas giant's ring system, even in the planet's orbital space. "Stealth technology," whispered Yilnara, her bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly with shock. "But their material science shouldn't be advanced enough for—" "These aren't their ships," interrupted Senior Analyst Korthma, his multiple eyes studying the readings frantically. "The energy signatures are wrong. These vessels are using technology at least 2 classification levels above human capability." Zaxthal studied the display with growing alarm. The human fleet, if it could be called that, was unlike anything in hegemony databases. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls. Massive constructs that appeared to be carved from single asteroids. Ships that defied conventional understanding of physics by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Give me fleet intelligence," Zaxthal commanded. "I need identification on these vessel types immediately." The response came faster than expected, and it wasn't what anyone anticipated. "Commander," came the trembling voice of Intelligence Coordinator Plixena, "we're reading Zephyrian design elements, quantum collective engineering patterns, even what appears to be Founder-class technology. These aren't human ships. They're allied vessels from at least 12 different species." The impossible was happening. Species that had never worked together, some that were supposed to be extinct, others that existed in theoretical physics rather than practical reality, had somehow allied themselves with humanity. On screen, Admiral Chin smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. "Surprised? You shouldn't be. While you've been conquering worlds and enslaving populations, we've been doing something the hegemony has never learned to do. We've been making friends." "Impossible," Zaxthal muttered. "No species voluntarily cooperates without hierarchy, without dominant structures. It goes against fundamental social evolution." "Does it?" Chun asked, as if she could hear him across the void. "You see the galaxy as resources to be exploited and populations to be controlled. We see it as neighbors to be befriended and cultures to be preserved. When we encountered the survivors of your conquests, we didn't demand their submission. We offered them shelter, assistance, and partnership." The tactical display continued to populate with new contacts. Energy readings that belonged to the legendary architects, the beings who had supposedly transcended physical existence millennia ago. Temporal signatures indicating the presence of Chronos collective vessels that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Bioships that could only belong to the thought-extinct symbionts, living vessels that grew rather than being built. "The first refugee ship we encountered was from Kepler, 438b, Chun continued. "A Zephyrian science vessel that escaped your pacification with 47 survivors. They told us about the hegemony, about the pattern of conquest that had been spreading across this galaxy for centuries. They also told us about other survivors scattered across dead worlds, hiding in asteroid belts, living in the ruins of their civilizations." Zaxthal's mind reeled. This was impossible. The hegemony had crushed every resistance movement, had broken every alliance that had ever formed against them. No species had ever successfully united multiple civilizations against hegemony expansion. "We started small," the human admiral explained. "Rescue missions, medical aid, sharing our technology, limited though it was, with species who had lost everything. We didn't ask for territory or tribute. We asked for stories. Their histories, their cultures, their knowledge. What made them unique?" Behind Chun, Zaxthal could see beings moving that shouldn't exist. The tall, crystalline forms of architects working alongside humans at control stations. the shifting, metallic shapes of quantum collective entities interfacing directly with computer systems. Even what appeared to be a founder, beings of pure energy that existed only in the most theoretical xenobiology texts. You want to know how we detected your stealth approach? Chen asked. The founders exist partially outside normal spacetime. Your ships might be invisible to conventional sensors, but to beings that perceive reality in 11 dimensions, you're about as subtle as a solar flare. The communications officer looked to Zaxthul for orders, but the commander found himself speechless. Everything he'd been taught about galactic civilization, about the natural order of species advancement, about the inevitability of hegemony expansion, was crumbling before his eyes. You're wondering how we manage it, Chen said, her voice carrying an odd note of sympathy. How beings that think in crystalline harmonics work alongside species that communicate through quantum entanglement. How energy-based life forms coordinate with biological entities. The answer is something the hegemony has never understood: respect. On the tactical display, the Allied fleet was taking formation, not in the rigid hierarchical structures the hegemony employed, but in fluid organic patterns that seemed to adapt and shift in real time. Ships moved in formations that shouldn't work according to any known military doctrine, yet the coordination was flawless. Each species contributes what they do best, Chen explained. The Zephyrians provide scientific innovation. The quantum collective handles computational analysis that spans multiple realities. The symbionts offer biological engineering that turns living beings into willing partners rather than conquered subjects. The architect creates structures that exist in perfect harmony with space-time itself. And humans? Zaxthul found himself asking, though his communications were supposed to be restricted. Chen's smile widened, and somehow this made her look more dangerous than any warrior the commander had ever faced. Humans? Were the ones who asked, why not, when everyone else said it was impossible. Were the species that looked at mortal enemies and asked if they'd like to be friends instead. Were the ones who saw beings of pure energy and offered them coffee and asked about their hobbies. The absurdity of it struck Zaxthul like a physical blow. Humans, barely past chemical propulsion, had somehow accomplished what the galaxy's greatest empires had declared impossible. They had created a functioning alliance of radically different species based not on conquest or hierarchy, but on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. This is your one warning, Chan said, her friendly demeanor suddenly becoming deadly serious. The Andromedans have already received our message. They're withdrawing from 3 disputed systems and entering preliminary peace negotiations. They've realized what you haven't, that there's a third option in this galactic war. Not hegemony dominance, not Andromedan resistance, but cooperation. The tactical display showed impossible numbers now. Thousands of ships representing dozens of species that shouldn't exist, shouldn't be able to work together, shouldn't pose any threat to the mighty hegemony Third Fleet. Yet here they were, arrayed in perfect coordination, their combined technological advantages making them potentially the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Withdraw from our space, Chen commanded. End your expansion into the local stellar region. We're not asking for your surrender. We're offering you a choice. Continue this path of conquest and domination, and eventually you'll face not just human resistance, but the combined opposition of every species you've ever wronged. Or, she paused, her expression becoming hopeful in a way that seemed almost alien to beings raised in the hegemony's rigid hierarchies. Or you could try something new. Instead of conquest, try diplomacy. Instead of domination, try partnership. Instead of enslaving species, try learning from them. We'll even help you get started. The diplomatic corps has beings who specialize in teaching former conquerors how to become productive galactic citizens. Zaxthul looked around his bridge. His crew, beings from across the hegemony's territory, united in their belief in the natural order of strong, dominating weak, stared at displays showing their fundamental worldview being challenged by creatures they had dismissed as primitive. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Commander Zaxthal of the Hegemony Third Fleet found himself completely uncertain of what his next order should be. The silence on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion stretched for several standard minutes after Admiral Chen's transmission ended. Zaxthal found himself staring at the tactical display, his four eyes independently tracking the movements of ships that defied everything he had been taught about galactic civilization. "Commander," Yulnara's voice was barely above a whisper, her bioluminescent patterns dim with confusion. "Your orders?" Before Zaxthal could respond, the communications array activated again. This time, however, the signal wasn't coming from the human homeworld. The image that materialized on the main view screen was impossible. A being of pure crystalline energy whose form shifted between visible light and something beyond conventional perception. "Greetings, Commander Zaxthal." The architect spoke, its voice resonating through dimensions the hegemony didn't know existed. "I am Resonance of Distant Stars, speaker for the Alliance of Free Worlds. We meet under circumstances that I find regrettable." Zaxthal's mandibles clicked involuntarily. Architects were legends, beings who had supposedly transcended physical existence eons ago and vanished from galactic affairs. To see one communicating directly with a hegemony officer was like witnessing a deity step down from mythology. "You're supposed to be extinct," Zaxthal managed. "Extinct." The architect's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "No, Commander. We simply chose to withdraw from galactic politics when it became clear that younger species were determined to repeat the same destructive patterns. We have been watching, waiting for a species to demonstrate genuine wisdom. The humans, they surprised us. Impossible. They're barely past chemical propulsion, technical advancement, and wisdom are not the same thing," interrupted another voice. The view screen split to show a quantum collective entity, a being that existed simultaneously in multiple realities, appearing as a constantly shifting geometric pattern that hurt to look at directly. "We are Node Prime 7743, representing the collective. Your species measures progress in conquered worlds and technological superiority. Humans measure progress in friendships made and cultures preserved." A third section appeared on the screen, showing something that made Zaxthal's genetic memory scream warnings. A founder, a being of pure energy that had helped seed life throughout the galaxy before disappearing into deep space, spoke with a voice like stellar wind. "I am First Light of Consciousness," the founder said. "My people created the protocols that became the foundation for most galactic civilizations. We built the pathways for interspecies communication, established the basic frameworks for peaceful coexistence. We have watched for millennia as those frameworks were ignored in favor of conquest and dominance." "Why?" Zaxthal asked, his training screaming at him that he should be calling for reinforcements, demanding surrender, anything except engaging in philosophical discussion with legendary beings. "Why ally with humans specifically?" Resonance of Distant Stars shifted, its crystalline form resonating with harmonic frequencies that somehow conveyed vast amusement. "Perhaps we should show him, Node Prime. Display the human archive." The tactical display dissolved, replaced by a three-dimensional map of the local stellar region. Hundreds of systems glowed with different colors: blue for hegemony-controlled space, red for contested zones, and an impossible array of other colors representing territory Zaxthal had never seen on any official chart. "This is what the hegemony sees," Node Prime explained. "Territory to be conquered, resources to be exploited, populations to be controlled. Now observe what humans saw when they first achieved interstellar awareness." The display shifted. The same map now showed completely different information: refugee camps hidden in asteroid belts, survivor populations clustered around dead worlds, escaped ships fleeing from hegemony expansion. Where the official charts showed empty space or pacified systems, the human map revealed a galaxy full of beings in need. The first human deep space vessel wasn't a warship or a colony ship, First Light of Consciousness continued. It was a hospital ship. They detected a distress signal from a Zephyrian science vessel that had been fleeing hegemony forces for 2 standard years. The display zoomed in on a specific system, showing the trajectory of a primitive human vessel intercepting a damaged alien ship. Captain Elena Vasquez of the UEDS Mercy made a decision that changed galactic history. Instead of reporting the contact to her superiors, instead of attempting to claim the alien vessel as salvage, she offered aid. Zaxthal watched in fascination as the historical data played out. The human vessel, crude by galactic standards, but equipped with sophisticated medical facilities, approached the Zephyrian ship. What followed challenged everything he understood about first contact protocols. The humans didn't demand to speak to leaders or request territorial concessions. Resonance of distant stars explained. They asked if anyone was hurt. They offered food, medical care, and sanctuary. When the Zephyrians explained their situation, refugees from a conquered world with nowhere to go, the humans said something unprecedented in galactic history. What did they say? Yilnara asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming military protocol. They said, "Would you like to come home with us?" The implications hit Zaxthal like a fusion blast. They offered citizenship to aliens? Without conquest, without assimilation protocols. More than citizenship, Node Prime corrected. They offered partnership. The humans were facing the challenge of building their first interstellar civilization. Instead of assuming they knew best, they asked the Zephyrians to help design it, to share their scientific knowledge, their cultural perspectives, their history. The display showed the development of human space over the following months. What had started as a single refugee rescue became a network of cooperation that grew exponentially. Each species the humans encountered added new dimensions to their civilization, not as subjects or allies in the traditional sense, but as genuine partners in building something new. The symbionts were next. First light of consciousness continued. A bioship fleeing from hegemony biological weapons research. The humans not only offered sanctuary, they asked the symbionts to help them develop living ships that could serve as mobile habitats rather than weapons platforms. Zaxthal watched the data flows showing human technology advancing at impossible rates, but not in the direction he expected. Instead of developing more powerful weapons or more efficient conquest mechanisms, they were creating systems for sustainable development, for preserving cultural diversity, for enabling radically different species to work together. The quantum collective made contact when human computational systems became sophisticated enough to detect our multidimensional mathematics, Node Prime added. We expected them to demand access to our reality manipulation technologies. Instead, they asked if we were lonely existing between dimensions and offered to design interfaces that would let us participate more fully in conventional space-time social activities. The absurdity of it was overwhelming. While the hegemony conquered worlds through superior firepower and advanced technology, humans were building an alliance by asking beings from higher dimensions if they wanted to join a book club. Each species contributed freely because they were asked, not commanded. Resonance of distant stars explained. The architects shared dimensional engineering because humans were the first species to use our knowledge to build hospitals across multiple realities simultaneously, allowing beings from different phases of existence to receive medical care together. Subcommander Yilnara was studying her own tactical displays, her bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly. Commander, the energy readings from their fleet, some of these technologies are theoretically impossible under current physics models. Not impossible, corrected a new voice. A section of the screen showed a being that made Zaxthal's combat instinct scream. A time weaver, one of the legendary species that existed across multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. Greetings, Zaxthal of the Third Fleet, the time weaver said, its voice somehow reaching them from past, present, and future simultaneously. I am Kronos Echo 77, representative of the Temporal Collective. We joined the Human Alliance when they became the first species to ask us not for time travel technology or temporal weapons, but for help preserving the cultural artifacts of extinct civilizations. The commander felt reality shifting around him. Everything he had been taught about superior species, about the natural order of galactic civilization, about the inevitability of strong, dominating weak, was dissolving in the face of something unprecedented, a civilization built on voluntary cooperation between radically different forms of existence. Your hegemony operates on the principle of hierarchical dominance. First light of consciousness observed. The strongest species rule, the weak serve, and advancement is measured in territorial expansion. This model has been tried thousands of times across galactic history. It always ends the same way: stagnation, rebellion, and eventual collapse. Then how Zaxthal began. How do we maintain unity without hierarchy? Resonance of Distant Stars completed his question. Through something your species has never experienced: genuine respect for diversity. Each member of our alliance contributes what they do best, without being forced to abandon what makes them unique. The tactical display shifted again, showing the internal structure of the Allied fleet. Instead of rigid command hierarchies, Zaxthal saw fluid networks of cooperation. Quantum collective entities handling multidimensional calculations, while symbiont bioships provided living habitats. Architect designed structures that existed in perfect harmony with spacetime, while founder energy patterns optimized the entire system for maximum efficiency. And in the center of it all, Node Prime said with unmistakable fondness, humans asking everyone what they need and figuring out how to make it work. But how do you make strategic decisions? Yulnara asked. How do you coordinate military actions without a clear command structure? Military actions? Chronos Echo 77's temporal voice carried vast amusement. Child of the Etherians, we are not a military alliance. We are a diplomatic one. This fleet exists not to conquer, but to protect the right of species to choose their own destiny. You're saying you won't fight? We're saying we won't attack. First light of consciousness corrected. But if you choose to begin hostilities against any member of our alliance, you will face the combined defensive capabilities of every species in this fleet. And there are capabilities here that even we do not fully understand. The implications were staggering. The hegemony had built its expansion on the assumption that superior technology and firepower would always defeat inferior forces. But what happened when those forces included beings that existed outside conventional physics, entities that could manipulate time and space, and technologies that transcended the known laws of the universe? There's another matter, Resonance of Distant Stars said, its crystalline form shifting to a more serious resonance frequency. Your war with the Andromedans. Zaxthal's attention snapped back to immediate tactical concerns. What about it? It ends now, all the Alliance representatives said simultaneously, their combined voices creating harmonics that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull itself. The Andromedans have accepted our mediation offer, Node Prime explained. 3 disputed systems are being evacuated by both sides, pending negotiations. The Andromedan High Command has agreed to discuss territorial boundaries based on species' actual needs rather than conquest potential. Impossible exécuter protested. The Andromedans have been fighting us for decades. They'll never accept peace while the hegemony exists. They will when the alternative is facing us, Chronos Echo 77 said simply. Your conflict with the Andromedans has consumed countless worlds and destroyed dozens of younger civilizations caught in the crossfire. We have offered both sides something neither expected, a way to end the war while preserving their core territories and populations. And if the hegemony refuses? First light of consciousness's energy patterns shifted to something that might have been sadness. Then, the hegemony will discover that there are fates worse than military defeat. We have shown you our fleet, Commander. We have not yet shown you what we are truly capable of. The tactical display changed one final time, showing something that made Zaxthal's blood freeze in his vessels. Ships throughout the Allied fleet were beginning to phase out of normal space-time, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Reality itself seemed to bend around the largest vessels as they demonstrated capabilities that transcended conventional understanding. The choice is yours, Zaxthal of the Third Fleet, Resonance of Distant Stars said, its voice now carrying the weight of eons. Withdraw from human space, and begin the process of joining galactic civilization as a partner rather than a conqueror. Or learn why every previous galactic empire eventually fell when it encountered something it could not dominate. As the transmission ended, Zaxthal found himself facing the most important decision in hegemony history, and he had less than an hour to make it before his fleet would be forced to choose between retreat and annihilation. Commander Zaxthal stood motionless on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his four eyes processing information that threatened to shatter everything he had believed about the nature of galactic civilization. Around him, his crew maintained their posts with the disciplined efficiency that had made the Hegemony Third Fleet legendary. But he could sense their uncertainty in the subtle shifts of posture and the nervous energy patterns emanating from the various species represented on his bridge. "Sir," Communications Officer Veltar's mandibles clicked anxiously. "High Command is requesting an immediate status report. They're detecting massive energy readings from our position." Zaxthal's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display, where the impossible Allied fleet maintained formation around the human homeworld. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, bio-vessels that pulsed with their own life forces, constructs that seemed to be carved from the fabric of space-time itself, all coordinated with a precision that defied every military doctrine in the Hegemony database. "What do we tell them?" Yilnara asked quietly, her bioluminescent patterns dim with confusion. The question struck at the heart of Zaxthal's dilemma. How could he explain to High Command that their fundamental understanding of galactic politics was wrong? That a species they had dismissed as primitive had accomplished what the greatest empires in history had declared impossible? That beings of legend were real and had chosen to ally with humans rather than the mighty hegemony? "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Fleet Admiral Corvindish," Veltar announced. "He's demanding immediate explanation for the delay in commencing pacification protocols." Zaxthal closed his eyes, all four of them, and tried to process the magnitude of the situation. Admiral Corvindish was a career military officer who had personally overseen the subjugation of 47 worlds. The concept of voluntary cooperation between species would be as alien to him as the existence of the beings now arrayed against the Hegemony fleet. "Open the channel," Zaxthal commanded. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the angular features and scarred carapace of Fleet Admiral Corvindish. Behind him, the war room of Hegemony High Command buzzed with activity as strategists and analysts monitored conflicts across 17 different fronts. Commander Zaxthal, Corvindish's voice carried the edge that had intimidated subordinates across half the galaxy. "Explain why your fleet has been sitting in the outer system for the past 3 hours instead of reducing the human homeworld to rubble." For a moment, Zaxthal considered trying to explain the impossible, but the sight of Corvindish's militant bearing, surrounded by the apparatus of hegemony power, made him realize the futility. Instead, he chose a different approach. "Admiral, I request permission to transmit our current sensor readings to High Command for analysis before proceeding with pacification." Corvindish's scarred features twisted with impatience. "Sensor readings? Commander, you have a single primitive world defended by a species that still uses chemical rockets. What could possibly require High Command analysis? With respect, Admiral, the situation has evolved beyond our initial intelligence estimates." "Evolved? Explain." Zaxthal gestured to his communications officer. "Transmitting current tactical data now, sir." The delay that followed was the longest few minutes of Zaxthal's career. He watched Corvindish's expression change from impatience to confusion to what could only be described as shock as the data reached Hegemony High Command. In the background, he could see analysts scrambling to make sense of readings that challenged their understanding of physics itself. "Commander," Corvindish's voice had lost its commanding edge. "Are you telling me that this single star system contains more advanced technology than the rest of the galaxy combined?" "That appears to be accurate, sir." "How is that possible? Our scouts confirmed the humans were barely past nuclear fission just 50 cycles ago." "They're not human ships, sir." Zaxthal took a deep breath before continuing. "Admiral, We're facing an alliance of species that shouldn't exist. Architects, quantum collective entities, founders, beings that exist across multiple temporal dimensions. They've allied with humanity and are defending human space. Species that existed only in theoretical xenobiology texts were apparently real and working together in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about interspecies relations. Commander, maintain position and await reinforcement, Corvin Dish finally ordered. I'm dispatching the first and second fleets to your position. If these beings want to challenge hegemony authority, they'll learn why we rule this galaxy. Sir, I strongly advise against. Your advice is noted and dismissed, Commander. The hegemony has never retreated from an inferior force, and we won't start now. Corvin Dish out. The transmission ended, leaving Zaxthal staring at a blank screen while contemplating the possibility that his species' greatest military leader had just ordered what might be the most catastrophic strategic blunder in galactic history. Commander, sensor operator Korthma's multiple eyes were focused intently on his displays. I'm detecting massive temporal distortions throughout the system. It appears the Allied fleet is multiplying. Zaxthal turned to the tactical display and felt his confidence in hegemony, superiority crumble completely. The number of contacts was increasing exponentially, not through new arrivals, but through what appeared to be temporal multiplication. Ships were existing simultaneously across multiple time streams, creating a fleet that was effectively infinite from a tactical perspective. How many vessels are we now tracking? He asked weakly. Impossible to determine precisely, sir. The Time Weavers appear to be bringing reinforcements from alternate timelines where different species achieved alliance with humanity. Current estimates range from 50,000 to infinite. Infinite. The quantum mathematics become unstable beyond a certain point, Commander. We may be facing opposition that exists across all possible realities where cooperation proves superior to conquest. Yilnara's bioluminescent patterns were cycling through colors that indicated profound philosophical distress. Commander, if these beings can manipulate time and alternate realities, what's to prevent them from simply erasing the hegemony from history? It was a question that had been growing in Zaxthal's mind since the first impossible readings appeared on his sensors. If their opponents possessed technology that transcended conventional spacetime, why were they offering negotiation instead of simply eliminating the threat through temporal manipulation? As if summoned by his thoughts, the communications array activated again. This time the signal was different, multidimensional, carrying information through frequencies that conventional receivers shouldn't have been able to process. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, Zaxthal could see representatives of species he was still struggling to accept as real. An architect whose crystalline form bent light into impossible patterns. A quantum collective entity that existed simultaneously in multiple mathematical dimensions. A founder whose energy patterns included frequencies that predated the formation of the galaxy itself. Commander Zaxthal, Chen began, her voice carrying a note of genuine sympathy. We intercepted your communication with Hegemony High Command. We know they're sending reinforcements. Then, you know resistance is futile, Zaxthal replied, though he wasn't sure he believed it anymore. Actually, Chun smiled sadly. We know this is about to become a tragedy unless someone shows wisdom. Commander, your reinforcements won't make a difference. We could end this conflict in minutes if we chose to employ our full capabilities. The question is whether we can end it without unnecessary loss of life. One of the Time Weavers stepped forward, its temporal voice reaching across dimensions. Zaxthal of the Third Fleet, we have observed the outcomes of this confrontation across 17,347 different timeline possibilities. In 17,346 of those timelines, the arrival of additional hegemony forces results in the complete destruction of your civilization. In the 17,347th timeline, Zaxthal found himself asking, "The one where you choose wisdom over tradition," Admiral Chen answered. The timeline where someone in the hegemony finally asks the question that changes everything. What question? What if there's a better way? The simplicity of it was somehow more devastating than any weapon. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had built its civilization on the assumption that conflict was inevitable, that strength meant the right to rule, that cooperation was possible only through dominance. The idea that there might be an alternative, that beings could work together as equals rather than as rulers and subjects, threatened to undermine the very foundation of everything they had built. "You're asking us to abandon everything we are," Zaxthal said. "No." Resonance of distant stars spoke, its crystalline voice harmonizing across impossible frequencies. "We're asking you to become everything you could be. The hegemony has conquered worlds and subjugated populations. But have you ever created anything? Have you ever built something that made the galaxy more beautiful, more diverse, more alive?" The question hit Zaxthal like a fusion blast because he couldn't think of an answer. The hegemony's greatest achievements were military victories, conquered territories, subjugated populations. They had built one of the largest empires in galactic history, but what had they actually contributed to the universe beyond their own expansion? "We offer you a choice, Commander," Chen said gently. "Not surrender, not subjugation, but transformation. The Alliance isn't about humans ruling other species or other species ruling humans. It's about each of us contributing what we do best to build something none of us could create alone. And what could humans possibly contribute to beings that manipulate time and space?" Yilnara asked, her scientific curiosity overriding military protocol. The founder's energy patterns shifted to what might have been laughter. "Humans contribute something we had forgotten was possible, the ability to look at completely different forms of existence and ask, would you like to be friends? They contribute hope, optimism, and the stubborn refusal to accept that conflict is inevitable." "Commander," Veltar interrupted urgently. "Long-range sensors are detecting the first and second fleets approaching from hyperspace. ETA, 43 minutes. Zaxthal felt the weight of galactic history settling on his shoulders. In less than an hour, the 2 most powerful military forces the hegemony had ever assembled would arrive to face an alliance that might possess the power to rewrite reality itself. Unless someone made a different choice. "If we were to consider your proposal," he said carefully, "what would that mean for the hegemony?" "It would mean learning a new way to exist in the galaxy," Chen replied. "Instead of conquering worlds, you could help rehabilitate them. Instead of subjugating populations, you could learn from them. Instead of building military might, you could build something that had never existed before, a truly cooperative galactic civilization." The tactical display showed the approaching hegemony fleets, massive formations of the most advanced warships in known space, racing toward a confrontation that would determine whether the galaxy's future would be built on conquest or cooperation. Zaxthal realized he had perhaps 30 minutes to make the most important decision in the history of his species, and possibly in the history of the galaxy itself.